Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up and running. 605-477-3249. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. And hour number one, I'm delighted to introduce to you your newest instructor at USA Prepares. So for those of you new to the class, there are over 200 of us here at USA Prepares. Experts in various areas. All of us are innovators. We're dentists, medical doctors, engineers, surgeons, broadcasters, CEOs, physicists, editors, researchers, authors, programmers, farmers, and students rising to become instructors. I'm delighted to introduce to you Phil Hudok. Phil Hudok has a website, hudok.info, HUDOK.info. Actually, there's several websites, but that one will get you where you need to go. We're going to be talking about the Treaty of Peace 2020. And why? Well, George in New Hampshire, USA Prepares instructor, called in a couple of weeks ago, and he said, you ought to get Phil Hudok on the broadcast class. And I said, be delighted to. And so George called or contacted Phil Hudok, and I was called. Phil Hudok and I chatted, and here we are on the air. Welcome, Phil Hudok.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. This is the biggest platform I've been on.
Are you serious?
I think so. Up to date,
Well,
to this date. Oh, by the way, I found out we had something in common talking last night. You taught computer science, and I taught computer programming. Yeah, besides science, I've taught for over 40 years, but that was what my advanced degree was in, was computing. So,
well, that's wonderful. What languages did you teach?
I just taught Pascal. That was back in the early 90s.
Yeah, that was the up-and-coming language.
It was. It certainly was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mrs. Finelli, my wife, I refer to her as Mrs. Finelli in the broadcast, was a computer programmer as well for some of the largest corporations in the world. And there was a real need for people who actually had mathematics degrees and could program simultaneously. And so she's one of them. And it's, you really have to be pretty bright to do that. You really do. So thank you for what you've done in teaching. Because I met a lot of teachers. And actually, I think they're programmed. I think they're programmed to show up.
Yeah, for sure. They have a tough time thinking out of the box, and that's what your listeners need to do today, is think outside the box.
Well, Phil, you've come up with let me just say this. You ran for the Senate in 2016, Constitution Party, West Virginia.
2014 for Senate, 2016 for governor.
Right. Okay. Excuse me. Correct. Mm-hmm. And you prevailed 3 times in the West Virginia Supreme Court. And that's impressive. Absolutely impressive. So I just want our class to know just a little bit about you. And class, if you'd like to find out more, hudok.info, HUDOK.info. Okay. So we're talking about the Treaty of Peace. Mm-hmm. So please tell us what it is. What is the Treaty of Peace 2020?
Okay, well, if your listeners probably should get something to write with because what they're going to hear about is right on. Everyone has a choice after they hear this program. And the choice is, number one, do they want free will where they do no harm to person or property? Or number two, do they want to be told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and what happens if you don't do it, including financing things such as unlawful wars, unconstitutional wars, crazy research, sex changes, forced vaccinations. Do they want permissions for traveling, to get married, to earn a living? Those things. We've been conditioned into the box of thinking that we can't do these things unless we bow down and we obey. We be obedient to a government which unfortunately does not even obey their laws. So that's what this is about. People after today have a choice. And that is the main impetus for me to get on programs, to be an instructor, is to say, hey, you have a choice. You may not have known about this choice, but now you're going to hear it.
There's a young couple whom I know. They live down the road, and they decided to get married several months ago.
Mm-hmm.
They mentioned it to our son. And I said to our son, well, why don't you just tell them how they can easily do it? They can have a wedding with a few friends. They can have it in their backyard. They can have it wherever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And they can just declare themselves married. They don't have to have permission from anybody.
That's right. In West Virginia, even now, if you, form a contract between you and the other person, and you get married by a non-licensed preacher, you can put that in the family Bible, record it, and that is lawful.
And so why would anybody not want to do that? Why would you want to buy a license? Why would you want permission from the state? And then if you decide, and hopefully you wouldn't, but if it just doesn't work out and you both made a mistake and you want to undo it, it's a lot easier to undo without the state being involved. It's a lot less expensive. You do it yourself.
Why should the state be involved in a sacrament which was created by God? That makes no sense. They've created themselves an intermediary position. And we're talking contract. Everything you do is actually a contract. I mean, when I met the girl that I'm now married to, I contracted to kiss her, and she actually accepted the contract and kissed me. Now we have 4 daughters. But everything's a contract. And what is important here is that the contract that people have have tethered themselves to, which is the U.S. Constitution, is actually void because the contract was abridged.
Now let's talk about that. So how was this contract abridged and voided?
Okay, let me give you a timeline. And let me put it this way. There are over 35 pounds of original documents. 35 pounds. You can imagine what that would take to go through those 35 pounds just in this situation. But people don't need to go through the entire thing. There's very little, actually, that they have to become aware of to make an intelligent decision. And that's what we want. We want an intelligent decision. I don't want to make anyone's decision as to do this except myself. I just present the opportunity. But let's go back to 2015, February, in West Virginia. 3 men petitioned the West Virginia legislature, and we had a videographer, and I and another of the petitioners presented to 10 ranking members of the West Virginia legislature a petition for redress of grievances and an acceptance of their oath of office as a contract between them and us. Okay? Well, we have the right to petition for redress of grievances. Unfortunately, there is nothing that says they have to respond. And they didn't respond. And so we went to the governor, we went to the state attorney general. We actually even petitioned the Supreme Court justices themselves for redress of grievances. And it ended up that we filed a case in the Supreme Court. It was accepted. And then it was amended to make the justices themselves defendants in the case, which meant that they would have had to have been recused, and 5 circuit court judges would have had to have moved in to continue. Well, they circled the wagons and canceled due process of law, and were in violation of multiple actions and multiple inactions. And most people have probably heard about a bunch of Supreme Court justices being impeached in West Virginia. Okay. And 4 of the 5 that were impeached at the time are the ones that we named as defendants. Okay. But this wasn't related to our suit. Well, we couldn't get anywhere in West Virginia because they just refused to follow the law. They didn't care. And so what became 4 men and 1 woman moved up the corporate food chain to all branches of the federal government. Now, you have to understand, I'm sure you know this, Vince, government is incorporated. And how can you be a government of, by, and for the people if you're a corporation? Because a corporation has its own laws. As a matter of fact, most entities form corporations for protection, you see. So we've got a really messed up situation where the federal government is outside the bounds of the Constitution. They're working hand in glove with the corporate media and the corporate military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower so appropriately warned us about. So anyway, now we're at the federal level, okay, and the date is now December 7th, 2018. You may remember December 7th has kind of an interesting history. Okay, it's called a day that'll live in infamy, and we're hoping it actually is a day that will live in infamy in this case too. We went to the federal government in December 2018, all 3 branches, and we presented them with 571 points of claim for their interactions with us, and we told them we needed validation of authorities, to validate the contract called the Constitution between them and us. They have to have authority. And so we said, okay, here's 571 things you're doing. Just show us your authority to do these things. And we got silence, no answer. Now, silence is lawful admission in this case that the contract that they have with us, since they couldn't show us authorities, it was void. So in December 28th, 2018, I'll go to the second part after. I think we're having a break, correct?
Yeah, we are. We're going into break. Phil Hudok, hudok.info, HUDOK.info. We'll be right back. Phil Hudok's with us, hudok.info, HUDOK.info. Phil, one of the things that we do here at USA Prepares is put exclamation points on things that are said. And I just want to put an exclamation point on what you just said. A couple of years ago, we received an invitation from the state of Missouri to send them $100,000 in what they claimed would be paying for unpaid sales tax from my family. Mm-hmm. And the guy that was heading up this fishing expedition was the senior legal counsel for the state of Missouri. And so I responded in writing several times. And one of the things that I said in writing was, show me your authority, and I want to know all the individuals involved, their roles, their names, addresses, and their roles in this, what you'll be doing with the information that you're requesting from me. And do you know Oh, and the source of this fishing expedition. Do you know the result was nothing but silence followed by an apology? Oh, most so sorry. Most so sorry. And I went on the air for, I read every piece of correspondence from me, from them, everything. I put the whole thing out in public. And they backed down. And then he did it again, this time by the administrator of the Department of Revenue. And same response from me. The same thing happened again. Apology. Oh, most so sorry. So, class, when you ask for the authority, that is really significant. So please continue. I just want to say that you're absolutely right, Phil Hudok.
Well, what you did was reasonable, and they like to remain in the dark, and so they don't want to be exposed. Let me say that in all this action, there were no attorneys, zero attorneys. Okay, as a matter of fact, they kept trying to say from the beginning that we were representing ourselves, and we had to correct them every time because why would I represent myself when I am myself? A representation is something less than me, and I'm certainly not going to reduce myself to some other lower common denominator. Okay, so basically, with their silence, the contract was lawfully void. And I was fortunately able to transition from the physics laws of gravity to contract law. You have to understand contract law. It's very important. For instance, let's say you work for McDonald's. You sign an employment contract. As a matter of fact, if you go in their bathroom, they tell their employees who has a contract with them that they must wash their hands. But they don't tell you or I because we didn't contract with them. Okay? Now, let's imagine they hire someone and the person shows up late and refuses to wear the McDonald's outfit. And so, is McDonald's going to continue the employment contract? Of course not. They might propose a new contract where this person can be contracted to go out and paint the garbage bin. Okay? And so once the contract called the Constitution was voided by them, we simply offered, and this is December 28th now, we offered a new contract under a new law form of our choice. And in my case, I personally rescinded my citizenship in favor of my true birthright as heir to the Creator. In other words, the United States of America had no part in my creation, in my birth or anything. Okay? Well, we offered them this new contract, and they could have said, no, we can't accept that contract. But there was silence, no answer. Well, guess what? Lawfully, this means that the new contract was accepted. Okay? Now we'll go to January 8th, 2019. We contact the federal government again, and we say, we've got a problem here. We've got our new contract, and we need to get together and negotiate a resolution of this dispute. As you found, the best thing for them to do was to be silent and not answer. But that has consequences in the long term.
Tell you what, we're going to a bottom of the hour break, a couple commercials, and we'll be right back with Phil Hudok. Absolutely riveting class. I'm sure you're taking notes. And he'll be back again and again and again. So we've got more to go. Plus, I want to thank George in New Hampshire for getting this ball rolling with Phil Hudok, hudok.info, HUDOK.info. Phil, you were talking about negotiation and resolution when we went into the break. Mm-hmm.
Right. I really want to thank you again for helping me on this mission to get this message out to everyone who wants it, and especially those who need it. So basically, when they failed to even answer in a quest to negotiate a resolution, we only had one thing left to do, or one avenue to go to, and that was third-party neutral arbitration. A neutral third party was called in to arbitrate this problem. Okay, and that goes back, early Athens, the British system of justice, and even the American system of justice. It was practiced by George Washington, and that's arbitration. In other words, you say, we can't get resolution on this. We can't come to an understanding. Let's go to someone who is independent and neutral, and we will abide by their decision. And there is in West Virginia, not West Virginia, but in federal law, they have to allow this if you've gone through all the steps. The government, this is not something where, like with a private entity, you would have to make an agreement and you both go to Judge Judy and she makes the decision and you both agree. In this case, because it is a civil rights violation, the government must accept the act of arbitration. So we went to a neutral arbitrator, and a hearing was scheduled, and we pledged to attend that hearing, but the government did not. So the arbitrator ruled in our favor. The arbitrator, they could have sat down with us, and we could have prevailed on our 571 points of claim, but we didn't even have to do that because they didn't even show. So that meant that there was an award issued, an award in hand. So I have an award in hand for that contract that was presented that the government accepted. Okay. And the amazing thing is, and this was done from day one, and this was to be done on behalf of all American people. This was just not going to be for Philip Hudok or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 individuals. This, the Bible says, I'm my brother's keeper. Okay. So if I know, for instance, if I know there's a felony being committed, you're breaking the law. It's called a misprision of felony if you don't alert the authorities of what's going on, And to be honest with you, I was just thinking about it today. With all these violations of the contract, the Constitution, and people going against their oath of office, that they're breaking the law. It's our duty, we as the American people, since it is supposed to be our government, of by and for the people, it's really our responsibility to keep government, which we created, in check. So here's the neat thing. So there is an award, and it's quite an award. Those that say that this doesn't work certainly either haven't done their homework or they're lying, because back in 1792, which was the second Congress, and all these things are on my website, there is an order, an act of Congress to provide remedy, which actually gave immunity from government interaction. It granted a land patent. Okay, these are some of the things that are now available to every American through this award and the contract that the award establishes. Okay, in 2016 there was a act by Congress again to provide remedy and relief to someone who won an arbitration award and who actually asked that over 24 other people become party to that remedy and relief, and they were released from prison. They were given land patents. They were given immunity from the government, just as a diplomat would have. And when a diplomat comes into this country, he is not subject to the laws because he's not a party to that contract called the Constitution. So we have in the congressional record, we have from the very beginnings of the country, and just recently in 2016, we had an award which was very similar, but not as close, but not as immense as what ours is. Okay. Let's see. In January of 2019, there was a case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court in which the arbitration for civil rights violation was upheld in the court. And as a matter of fact, Kavanaugh wrote the opinion, a very strong opinion. An arbitration award actually carries more weight than a Supreme Court decision itself, because the Supreme Court can always overrule. They can always overrule a previous decision, whereas an arbitration award, once it is given, it is final. It cannot be reviewed. And if you look at that case in the Supreme Court, that's exactly what is in the opinion by Brent Kavanaugh. Another thing, which again provides rock solid support that this is absolutely 100% lawful, is that Representative Hank Johnson Jr. Now, do you know who Hank Johnson Jr. is, Vince?
Please tell us.
He is a delegate from, I believe it's Georgia. He became famous on the internet when he addressed a general in a hearing, and he said that Guam, the island of Guam, was in danger of capsizing because the federal government was adding to a military installation on the island of Guam. He was afraid it was going to capsize because of too much weight on one side of the island. Okay, so I mean, it's so crazy. You wonder how anyone can get out of a nut house, let alone be in Congress. But anyway, he sponsored a bill, and he sponsored it in January of this past year. The bill is 1423, and in true Orwellian doublespeak, he called it the FAIR Act, FAIR. Okay, Forced Arbitration Injustice Repeal Act. So he actually presented into Congress a bill that any future arbitrations that they couldn't happen anymore for civil rights violations. Okay, it was a repeal of that, and sadly, we were told this has no chance. But it had 222 co-sponsors, and it did pass the House. It is now in the Senate, and if this becomes law, then there will be no future civil rights arbitration. So, anyone that says, well, you can't do this, well, then why is there a bill to get rid of it? Why is there congressional proof that this has been done over and over and over? See, a lot of people don't understand how Congress can solve a problem between the people and the government, and it's called a bill on the private side. Okay, for instance, here in West Virginia, we had a person who their house was surrounded by what became federal forest. Well, the folks that worked for the Forest Service, they blocked the road that this man used to get to his house. He had no way to get to his house except by helicopter. Okay, well, you can't do that. You can't take away someone's right to travel to their residence. So he complained, and a bill was written to rectify that problem. Okay, and the highest court in the land is actually not the Supreme Court. It's actually the legislature. Okay, they can impeach Supreme Court justices and should if they were doing their job sometimes. So anyway, there's plenty of evidence that what we've done for the people, okay, it's a gift. It doesn't cost anything. I'm not making any money, but I want everyone to have the option to actually live as a free person The only way the government could interface with you would be if you were guilty of a capital felony, and that would have to be in the U.S. Supreme Court, and the only people that could interface with you would be federal marshals, and the only thing they could do to you is to force you to leave the country. That's it. And that's exactly, again, what happens with a diplomat who has diplomatic immunity. When they come into the country cannot interface with them on any level, and if there is a problem, a serious problem, the country can just say you have to leave. That's it. So what I'd like to get into now are some of the benefits that we have in the bill for settlement, okay, which will commence on January 7th. By the way, people can opt in up to December 25th. That's an easy date to remember. So you can go to my website and everything's explained there. But here are just some of the things that are in our bill for settlement. First of all, there will be an unconditional release and setting at liberty of the beneficiaries. Any case, past or present, is void. Beneficiaries are to receive immediate and unconditional indemnification. Also, immediate and unconditional immunity. Return of all property and assets held by the government. All records will be expunged or destroyed. Land patents will be issued by the Land Patent Office. There will be an accounting and return of any accounts of any nature. And one thing that a lot of people will be interested in, there will be no effect on payments based on extraction of funds from labor related but not limited to Social Security, Medicare, and pension. These are not entitlements. These are something where your labor and your money was taken under contract. So they're going to have to abide by that contract.
Phil, we're going into a break again. This will be our last break, and we'll have about 5, 6, 7 minutes after the break to share with our class the important facts that you'd like to share. We'll be right back, class. Phil Hudok's with us. Hudok.info, HUDOK.info. Class, please visit the website, learn what you can, and be prepared for the next broadcast, which I believe is going to be next Friday if Phil's schedule works out that way. Phil, does your schedule work out for next Friday same time?
Absolutely. I'm on.
Okay. All right. There you go, class. So do your research. Be ready. And if you'd like to call in, we'll pay for the call. And that number today and next Friday is 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And that will be from 9 a.m. through 10 a.m. Central Time. Phil, please continue.
Yes. Folks need to understand that they should not succumb to the social engineering of the controllers. For instance, they take words and they actually put thoughts in our minds that we, through reflex actions, associate. For instance, I ran third party, Constitution Party for U.S. Senate and Governor. But here's the problem. When you say third party, people automatically come up with this because they've been programmed. You're wasting your vote. You know that, Vince. That's what they do. They take a word such as sovereign, and then they create, well, you are anti-government. You want to bring the government down. Listen, I'm not wanting to bring the government down. I'd like to see it reform and be what it was meant to be, at least in the eyes of the framers. They didn't create something perfect, but we'll look at what we have now. It's unrecognizable, So we call this Treaty of Peace. However, today, officially, as of right now, it will be called the Bill of Peace 2020, simply because we will be going to Congress for a bill or to the President for an executive order. And personally, I'd rather go to the president for an executive order because he could fill a campaign promise, which was to return sovereignty to the people of America. He said that in a United Nations address. Okay, so here you go, Mr. President. Here is a way to show that there is a problem and that you can restore sovereignty to the people. And I hope in the larger sense, Vince, I hope that this is a catalyst for good things to happen, not just for those that opt in, but for everyone. Of course, the more people that opt in, the more political leverage we have. You know, they're going to have to do damage control, simply because this exposes that there are people now who know what's going on and won't bow down and lick their boots. I was created in the image of God, and that's not what I'm supposed to do. You know, I'm supposed to stand and having done all. And so, you know, for me, it's very, you know, for me, it's spiritual. I hope that people who would use this, go into it, would do it for the right reasons, not as a license to sin, but as a way to be free and a way to, you know, just be a much more obedient child of God. For me, that's what it is. But, you know, I can't judge people's hearts, you know, but I can tell them about free will, and I can say, listen, look at this. You know, this this is fantastic. You know, I've been involved in some things. I've got to give God the credit, and I'm not the only person that was involved in this, so I don't take all the credit for it. More than anything, I'm the mouthpiece. I'm the one who says, hey, folks, stop, listen, look at this, think, use your brain. God gave you a brain, use it, you know. So don't let yourself be conditioned and controlled by someone who should not be controlling you. You know, you should be able to do anything without, as long as you don't harm person or property. But that's not the way it is now. Since 1933, we have technically been labeled enemies of our own government. That's how they could take your gold or put you in jail for 10 years or $10,000 fine or both back in 1933. And that has never been rescinded, Vince. Technically, we are still. So when they say war against crime, war against drugs, you know, war against poverty, in reality, they're telling you something that's true. They suspended the Constitution in 1933, and the West Virginia Constitution says it cannot be suspended in wartime and or peace. And so that was one of the things that woke me up, and everybody that was involved in this had their own awakening to something new.
Phil, you're talking about, we only have maybe 40 seconds left. You're talking about no longer being required to pay property taxes. You're talking about no longer being required to send your children under threat and duress to the public training camp to be indoctrinated based on what they want to indoctrinate your children to. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. So, you know, people go to the website. You know, there are videos there, articles, documents, summaries. There's an email address for any questions. Use it. I made it.
We're out of time. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Just me for hour number 2. I'm going to be talking about some tips I have, tips from the book, the unpublished book. I have nothing to sell, so this is not a commercial. These are just thoughts that I've had, that I've written down over the years, the way I do things. I think things that I have learned, I think these are a little bit better ways to do things, and most people do them. I'm not bragging. It's just that I found better ways, faster ways, sometimes much slower. It takes me longer to do a lot of things, but the right way. These are what I would believe, the right way. But I just want to talk about Walmart and my glasses first. So about 5 years ago, I went to Walmart and I ordered some glasses. I had the prescription for them. I brought that in, and I found the frames that I wanted. And The price was reasonable. So I ordered them and for reading, just for the computer, and I wanted them tinted for a reduction of glare. So I got some rose-colored glasses. And if any of you have seen me at the Get Prepared Expos or the meetups, and you might have seen me with these rose-colored glasses on. Well, they're not pink. They're kind of literally a rose color. Well, anyway, I bought the first pair and I liked them so much I thought, you know what, I should probably get another pair in case I scratch them up when I'm doing fine work in the shop or machining something or woodworking. And I also use these as when I'm doing fine work to protect my eyes, from debris and flying objects. Well, I had them tinted. They tinted them at the store. They charged me $10 for that. And they came out just really neat. I went back weeks later, maybe months later, and said, could I have another pair? Could I buy another pair? Sure. And so I showed them the glasses that I had on. I wanted to take them back with me. And they said, sure, you can get these like in a couple days or tomorrow or something like that. And they called me. They said they were in. I went and picked them up, and they were perfect. And they had a dye tank at the Walmart that I went to. It was great. They actually knew what they were doing. They tinted the glasses. And both of them are so close to each other, I can pick either pair up, and I don't look for the other pair because they're just fine, both of them. They're a little bit different, just slightly different, almost imperceptible. Now, this was done by someone saying, yeah, I can see which color they are. I can, sure, I'll tint them for you. And without having the reference, they got it right. First time. Well, let's move toward a few weeks ago. I decided to get some more glasses. And of course, you can't just use that prescription from 5 years ago. No. You have to go to the eye doctor and get a new prescription. So, another $150 was added to the equation. So I got the prescription. I went to Sam's Club, and they couldn't deal with Sam's Club. The young guy there who called to say that the glasses we're in was so offensive that I said, I don't want them. I don't want them. Of course, the big problem with Sam's Club, as a matter of fact, they ended up giving me a free year subscription, and they refunded my money, and I have not been back to their optical department. As a matter of fact, I wanted to cancel my 26-year membership with Sam's Club because this young millennial, this offensive thing, was just bothering so much I didn't even want to go to the store. So now I hardly go to the store. I would say as a result of this young millennial, Sam's Club has lost 99% of our business. I don't want to go there anymore because of him. Can you imagine that? 26 years of good experiences damaged, almost beyond repair, by one guy. One careless, reckless, insensitive guy. Oh, by the way, he was reprimanded. But he still has his job. Can you imagine that? Anyway, so I went to Walmart with Mrs. Finelli to get my prescription filled. And I said, I'd like them tinted. And they don't display that they tint glasses. Why is that? I'm going to tell you in a minute. So they brought out the chart or the samples, and not one sample was one that I really liked. I said, no, I'd like them just like these, the ones I have right here, these rose-colored ones. I don't want them gray. I don't want them blue. I don't want them pink. I like them rose-colored, just like these. Okay, well, the closest one we have is this. It's called half brown. Half brown is, I guess, close enough if I were willing to compromise. And that was my only choice. So I said, okay. And they send the glasses out to one of 3 Walmart labs. Walmart owns their own labs. They sent the glasses out. A week later, I got a call. The glasses are in. I went in, and the lady had me sit at the table. She put the glasses on, and I said, I don't want them. And she said, why? And I said, because they're the wrong color. They're gray. They make everything look gloomy. It looks like I'm going out in the fog, just before dark. I don't like them. I'm not going to wear these. They'll ruin my mood. And Mrs. Finelli looked and she said, they're gray. They're awful. So the gal brought out the next pair. One was for reading, one was for distance. And actually, I passed my driver's test without any glasses. So these would be just kind of nice to have. And I can certainly read without glasses as well, but I'd prefer to have reading glasses, especially for the computer. Well, she brought out the other one, and they were a different color, gray. So here we have two pairs of gray glasses. They were ordered to be a kind of a rose color. They call it half brown. They're supposed to be rose color. They come out gray, and the lady tells me that they're what I ordered. And I said, no, they're not. Let's get the sample. So she gets the sample, and she looks at the sample, and the glasses are gray. The sample is kind of a half light brownish rose color maybe. And there's three different, the sample lens and the two glasses are all different. So she was telling me that it's what I ordered, and I said, I don't want them. She said, what do you want? What do you want me to do? I said, I don't want you to do anything. You're fired. And she was stunned, absolutely stunned that I fired her right then and there. I said, I want to talk to anybody but you. I want to talk to the manager. She said she was the manager. Of course you are. So I said, I want to talk to the store manager. The store manager. Well, he's not here. He's on vacation. Of course he is. So the guy who was acting as the store manager came over, and I explained to him what's going on. And I said, these don't match. He said, no, they don't. And he wanted to know what I wanted to do. I said, I want what I ordered. Well, they were willing to order them again. But I could not take the glasses with me that I already paid for. I'd have to pay for another pair. And it got so complicated. I said, I thought maybe you'd let me take these with me in case I need them for passing my driver's exam that I'm going for like tomorrow. And that my prescription expired already just like today or the day before. And so now I have to go get another $150 optical appointment. And you ordered the wrong glasses, and I thought you'd make this right and just send me home with these, order another pair, and then call me when they're in. I bring this pair back, and I get the replacement pair. I thought that's what you're going to do. No, you have to buy the second pair. I was livid, absolutely livid. So finally, they decided, they said they wouldn't trust me. Finally, they decided they would. I was supposed to trust them to get the right glasses right, but they wouldn't trust me. So finally what happened was they ordered another pair, and I just got the call from the optical department manager, the same gal, middle-aged gal, and she told me that they're not right. They don't match what I ordered. They don't match the notes. They don't match. I said, now put on this order that I want them rose-colored. Explain to them what I'd like so the lab can understand. Well, they get one pair one day, they get another pair another day. Two different guys work on it. I said, do you have millennials working there? So, yeah, we got millennials over there. So here's the point. So the reference lens that they have when they sell you is old, and it changes color. The reference lens that they have at the lab is a different age, different color. So there's no way that you can say, I want this color at the store and have the lab look at a sample that is labeled the same color and have them be the same color. They're different colors because they're different ages and they change colors. There's no way, it's impossible for lenses to be matched from the sale reference to the lab reference lenses. That's Walmart. Now, they used to be able to do it at the store, and they get it perfect. No, too hard. Too hard. They actually had to have people who understood what they were doing. Kind of a mix of art and science. But they can't do that anymore. So she told me, and these are her words, we were a total fail, whatever that means. I guess that means total failure. They totally failed. And she said, you might not want these either. But they won't make them again. They're not going to try for six pairs to see if they can get it right. So now it's my problem that they can't get it right, and now my prescription is out of date. That's Walmart. That's millennials. They can't even get 2 pairs of glasses ordered on the same day, at the same time, on the same order. They can't get them the same color or even close. Everybody agrees now, when I stood my ground, that they were wrong. But I think there was something else going on. This was the time when I was doing a research project. I decided to look scruffy. I decided to see what it was like to be homeless or treated as someone who was homeless. So I grew my beard. I looked scruffy. My hair was long. I was a cross between Albert Einstein and a Bowery bum. That's what I looked like. But I didn't speak as a Bowery bum. I didn't have the teeth of a Bowery bum. I didn't have the odor of a Bowery bum. The hygiene was good. But because I was doing this research project, which coincided with me getting my portrait, my 6th-year portrait for the state of Missouri, for my permission to drive on our roads, I decided that I needed to look my best, but it coincided with my research project, and you know what? I looked scruffy. I did. And just as a side, I saw my driver's license picture was awful. Oh my gosh, you hardly recognized me. So I immediately shaved when I got home. I couldn't stand it. We'll be right back. So, in my opinion, Walmart does not offer in-store tinting of eyeglass lenses because they make so many mistakes and they ruin so many pairs of glasses that they don't offer it anymore. Now, why is that? I believe that has a lot to do with the young people that they hire don't have the capability yet, or the understanding, or the desire to learn the trade. No longer do we have internships. No longer do we have apprenticeships. If you go to the Walmart battery, tire, and lube area, they take people or hire people who have very little knowledge about anything, and they let them work on your car. You'd be crazy in my opinion, to bring your car to Walmart for a tire change, tire replacement, tire repair, battery swap out, or an oil change, or any kind of service. I wouldn't let them touch my vehicle, no matter what, because I've seen at our shop the results of their lack of care, lack of concern, lack of knowledge, ignorance about what they're doing. For example, I mentioned on the air that the auto parts store got a call because one of the engineers in the oil changing department at a local Walmart used the wheel lug nut, tire lug nut impact wrench on the drain plug of a vehicle and tightened it so tight it stripped out the threads. Twice, 2 different vehicles. And so I looked up, how much does that cost? How much does it cost to repair the, if you strip out a drain plug and you want to replace the oil pan and do the job correctly, it can cost $600 or more. Now, that's a result of carelessness. Absolutely result of carelessness. So why would you bring your vehicle to Walmart? And they're not the only ones. These quick oil change places, I wouldn't bring them to them either. So you have to learn how to do that yourselves. Okay, so here's the red truck, silver truck story. So we have a couple neighbors, and both of these trucks have been to our farm for service and repair and diagnostics and things like that. So one of them, the silver truck, was up on the lift for days, lots of repairs, radiator, cooling system repairs. Our son went through this with a fine-tooth comb. The neighbor bought this truck used, and he wanted to make sure it was roadworthy and right. So it spent a couple days on lift. It had the wrong antifreeze in it. The antifreeze ate through the previous radiator and the replacement radiator, so it required a cooling system flush. It required lubricants and fluids, and I mean a lot of work, about $1,000 worth of work. That's what it would have cost, or more, to get this thing reasonably roadworthy. And so our son went through it very carefully, and the owner was delighted. And then that's the silver truck, four-wheel drive, full size. Then there's a red truck in here, and same thing. It was, except it was owned by the farmer for years and years and years. And our son went through it and got it all just like great shape. Then the farmer sold it, the red one, and a young boy bought it. And so the silver truck was going downhill, and it was a frosty morning a few days ago. And the young man in the red 4x4, full size, did not clean off his windshield, did not remove the frost, and drove right into the back of the silver truck and totaled both of them. Bent the frame on the silver truck, full size, four-wheel drive pickup truck. Pretty hard to do, right? Hitting it in the rear. How hard do you have to hit it in the rear to total it? Well, he did. And he totaled the red one, too. So that's carelessness, recklessness. And it makes me angry. It really does. As a matter of fact, I would just because of the carelessness of this young millennial, I wouldn't shop at the farm supply place where he works. And if the management says, "Hey, Vin, I haven't seen you in a while," and I go, "What? You know why?" Let me tell you why. Because if this guy can't take care of his own property, if he's that careless and reckless with it, why would I trust him with anything I'd buy from you? We'll be right back. Okay, so I looked up the cost of replacing an oil pan for a Saturn SL1. Now, we're not talking about a real big car here, and we're not talking about a really expensive car. The cost, if you had your oil changed at the Chinese factory outlet and they stripped your oil drain plug threads on the oil pan, it would cost between $443 and $657 to have that repaired, have that oil pan replaced. Unless you used helicoils or you used an oversized drain plug or something like that. But if you wanted it back where it was before they damaged it, it would be $443 to $657. Okay, so one of the things I did in the last few days was I hung some curtains in our house, in our farmhouse. And if you've ever hung curtains, and this is from my book. Now, please don't do anything I say without considering what you're doing and do your own research. Okay, just because it's the way I do it doesn't mean you should do it this way. But this is the way I do it. I have never seen anyone hang curtains in anyone's house properly, according to the way I would do it. And here's why. Curtain rods, in our house, the curtains are heavy. Most of them are lined, so they weigh a lot. And a lot of them are 40 years old, some maybe 50 years old. My mom made them or my grandmother made them, and they're top quality. They're just old. And they're heavy. So, and they are almost from ceiling to floor. Well, I particularly like best the traverse type rods where you have these ropes that you pull on one or the other, and the curtains will move along this traverse rod. And I haven't seen very many curtain rods that are heavy enough to support heavy curtains. So the ones that I buy say super heavy duty. So they'd be like standard heavy duty. Well, these are marked super heavy duty. They're made in China, of course, as most things today. But they're designed to attach with screws to one of two locations. Either above the trim of the window. Now, that would most likely be into sheetrock. or into the trim around the window, the molding, if you will. Well, the molding is never designed to support much weight, and typically it's either curved or it's a stepped kind of a molding, and it's not designed to hold a flat bracket for the curtain rods. So it makes no sense to me to use plastic anchors into the sheetrock and have the curtains pull the curtain rods right out of the sheetrock and leave holes. Makes no sense. So here's what I do. I take a piece of 1x2 or 1x3 furring strip, and they're about $5 at those lumber stores. And I cut it to the width of the molding of the window, and I lay it on top of the molding of the window, so it sets right on top of the molding. I prime it, and I paint it the wall color, so it matches the wall. And it sticks out 3/4 of an inch, about the same amount that the molding sticks out. And you can't even see it unless you really, really look. And as a matter of fact, if you came to our house and you looked at it, you'd never notice that it's different. You wouldn't notice it. And it looks like that's the way it should be done. And then I use sheetrock screws to attach the bracketry of the curtain rods to this horizontally mounted furring strip. Now, I said 1x2 or 1x3 because it depends on the bracket that your curtain rod assemblies have. And then I pre-drill the furring strip before I mount it to the wall where the nails are going to go. And I use 8-penny finishing nails. 8-penny. So small finishing nails might be 4-penny. Next size in diameter and longer would be 6. Next would be 8. Next would be 10. Finishing nails have small heads. And you can countersink them. Use a nail punch or a nail set. Tap, tap, tap with a hammer, and they go below the surface of the finished wood, and you fill it with putty, and you never see the nails. Well, but you have to find the studs above the windows. Now, where are the studs? Well, the studs are right to the outer side of the window frame. So you know where the window ends. It's beneath the molding, the vertical molding. That's where the studs are. So you can tap like with your knuckle and your middle finger knuckle and listen for when the sound changes. It'll go as you tap the sheetrock. The sound will change when you're right over the stud. That'll give you a really good indication. And if you want to be sure if there's a stud there, you can take a 4-penny finishing nail and you can drive it in gently into the sheetrock. And when you hit resistance, that's where the stud is. And you go to the other side and do the same thing. And you find, depending on how wide your window is, you might want to put 2 other nails. So in our case, I have 4 8-penny finishing nails holding up the 1x3 furring strip that's been painted, primed and painted, and finished to match the wall. So once that's up and contacting horizontally the molding, then I can screw the curtain rods in. And I use a drill that's a little bit smaller than the sheetrock screws. I like the sheetrock screws. And I particularly used 1-inch sheetrock screws. And it's as strong as can be. I've never seen a stronger installation for curtains. And that's the way we hang them all over the house. And you put them up, and you know what? They don't fall down. Now, does it take longer? Absolutely. Does it take a lot longer? Well, it took me probably an hour for each one to get it right, because that board has got to be perfect. It's got to be sanded. It's got to be primed and painted. And it's got to be right, or I'm not happy with it. So that's how I hang curtains. And that's one of these things in the book. So in the same room, I decided to finish the wiring. Okay, so the wiring was all run in the walls. It was in the boxes. And what kind of boxes do I use? Well, I use the same ones everybody else uses. My favorite choice is the metal boxes. But it wasn't practical when we were building the house to use metal boxes everywhere. So this one particular room has those blue Carlon brand boxes. And you can buy them at any of these building supply places, like Lowe's or Home Depot. And I bought them by the case. And they have different sizes. So if we're talking about a standard box for just a duplex receptacle, and duplex receptacle is one of those that has two places for plugs. So you can plug two plugs into a duplex receptacle. That'd be a standard receptacle that you have in your house. Well, the blue boxes, the least expensive ones, are the kinds that are called new work boxes, meaning new construction. The most expensive kind are the old work boxes. Okay, they're the ones that you cut a hole. It's an irregular shaped hole, and there's some screws with these ears that flip out inside the wall, and your box is held in by the sheetrock, only by the sheetrock, and these little two ears, one on the top, one on the bottom of the boxes. I don't like this. So I'll tell you how I install a box. If I'm doing new construction, I will take a stick, and I will measure the height that I want the top of the box. And I'll put a piece of electrical tape on that stick, wrap it around the stick, and let's say it's 18 inches or 24 inches. And I will go from wherever I want those outlets to be, I will put a mark with pencil on the wall, and that's the top of the box. And I'll go from location to location to location. I'll look at the studs, and I'll figure out, can I really put one there? What's the best way to run the wire? I don't want to weaken the wood. And you should, by the way, you should buy this book. It's the book that I use, and I love this book. It's the Black & Decker. It's called The Complete Guide to Home Wiring. I have the revised and expanded edition. There's a blue and white toggle light switch on the front cover. It's probably 10 years old, and pages are falling out. It is fabulous. It's the same book I sent to Steve Elkins because I wanted him to know about home wiring as well. So back to the boxes. So I use the blue boxes, and I nail them on the studs. There's 2 nails that come with each blue box. But I'm not happy with just that. So what I do is I take a drill with a long bit, let's say 10 inches long, and I'll drill another hole in the box against the stud, and I'll put a sheetrock screw in there. So now I have 2 nails and a sheetrock screw going through the plastic box into the stud. Now that box doesn't move at all. It works really, really well. Now let's say I want to do some old work, and I have. I wanted to run UPS, whole house UPS, into a room that didn't have it. So what I did was I took a box, and I got a level, and I figured exactly where I wanted to put the receptacle in the box. And I found the stud. How did I find the stud? Tap, 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 as I told you before. Found the stud. And then I took a very small 4-penny nail, and I popped the nail into the sheetrock until I found the stud. I found the edge of the stud. And then I put the box against the wall, the open side against the wall. I traced where I'm going to cut the wall, and I cut the wall so I have a hole in the wall that matches exactly the opening of the box. And I use one of those boxes that has nails on the side, but you can't put that box inside the wall. So what I did was I cut off the tabs that hold the nails with a pair of, I don't even know if you can use this word, dikes. Dikes, that stands for diagonal cutters, or it used to. I think it means something different now. But I used a pair of dikes, and I cut off the ears that hold on the nails, and then I went to my grinder, and I ground off the remains of the box that where the ears were, and now I had a square box, or actually a rectangular box. And I drilled 2 holes inside the plastic that would mate with the wood stud, and that's where I put the sheetrock screws. Now I use 1 5/8 inch sheetrock screws to hold this box. Now you don't have to do it that way. You can do it the easy way. You can go to Lowe's and buy an old work box, and you can pay, let's say $2 for it, or you can buy the kind of box that I just used that works way better for about 30 cents. And when you buy boxes, they come with a measurement stamped in them as to how many cubic inches they are. And you can buy the cheap boxes, and they used to be about 18 cents a piece, the blue ones with the nails. But the problem with them is they're too small. No contractor in their right mind would use those. They would use the larger ones, deeper ones. Same face opening, but deeper, more room for wire. Now, why would you want more room for wire? Well, it makes it a lot easier to connect them. You can have the wires be a little bit longer and still stuff them back in the box. And when we come back, I'll tell you the really, really big reason. So, class, I have a feeling that some electricians might say I've lost my mind when I mentioned converting a new work box into an old work box or a retrofit type box by cutting the ears and removing the nails and using sheetrock screws from within the box. They may say that's crazy, but do your own research and make sure that you understand what you're doing before you do it. But that's the way I do it. And I looked up the price. I just went to Lowe's on the internet, and I looked up the price of the cheap boxes, the cheap blue ones that you see in the electrical department. They're 18 cubic inches internal space, 18. And they're 24 cents a piece. Those are the cheap ones. I don't recommend you use those. I recommend you spend the extra 26 cents each and buy they look the same. It's just they're deeper. And they are 22 cubic inches. So there's a lot more internal space inside the larger boxes. They hold the same receptacles, the same switches, all that's the same, except they're deeper. And you've got plenty of space in the wall for the deeper boxes anyway. Now what happens is the connections, the switches, depending on the load, those wires could get warm. And if you have more air in the box, there is more space for those devices to cool. Now, specifically, if you have a dimmer, there's a heatsink on the dimmers. Now, some of the old dimmers had a heatsink that looked like a finned aluminum plate because the heat was so great it could not be dissipated within the box. But if you buy a modern type dimmer and you use it with LED lighting, the heatsink is actually inside the box. So you need a little more airspace. And the other thing that I'd like to say is when I wire these electrical boxes in the wall, I push the wires in from the bottom. There's typically 4 holes in a box, a square or rectangular box for switches and receptacles. And you can have wires entering from the top of the box or the bottom of the box. You can have them enter against the stud or away from the stud. Now, my first choice is to put the wire in next to the stud and from the bottom. Now, why is that? Well, because I know that dust falls down, doesn't fall up. So over the years, there will be dust in this box. No matter how meticulous of a housekeeper you are, dust is going to enter these boxes. So I don't want dust coming down the wall, inside the wall cavity, and into the area where the switches and receptacles are. I don't want that to happen. So I prevent that as much as possible by putting the wires in from the bottom, because there's area or space around the wires in the hole in the box. Okay? So that's just a simple thumbnail of how I look at electrical wiring boxes. There's something else I want to tell you, that it took me about half a day to wire, actually probably almost a day after the broadcast until the evening, to wire the outlets in one room. Why? Because I don't wire them the way the books tell you to do it. If you have downstream outlets, so let's say you have a circuit and it's got wall receptacles, and let's say there's 6 or 8 of them in a room, well, they're probably all going to be on the same circuit, meaning one circuit breaker. On a receptacle, you will see 5 screws for electrical use. You'll see 2 of them that are brass colored and 2 of them that are silver colored and 1 of them that's green. The silver colored go to the neutral or the white wire. The brass ones go to the black wire. Black brass, BB, black brass. That's how you can remember that. And The green one goes to the ground wire, the uninsulated bare copper wire. All right. So what would happen is you'd have two incoming wires attaching to one silver and one brass screw. Then outgoing, you'd have one wire, one white wire to a silver screw and the black wire to the brass screw. The problem with that is if the screws become loose, the downstream outlets stop working, or you can have arcing or have a fire. That's crazy to me. So what I do is I don't wire them that way. I will take the two black wires and I'll add a pigtail, 8 to 10 inches long, with another black wire. And I'll twist them together and I'll solder them with 60-40 radio solder. Not acid core solder, not plumbing solder, radio solder. You don't want to use acid core solder on anything electrical because it's corrosive. The proof is if you look at copper plumbing and you look at where the elbows and the couplings are, you'll find out that there's green corrosion. Well, you can't have that on wiring. So you need to use 60-40 radio solder with rosin core. And what I do is I twist the incoming and the outgoing white wires together with a pigtail. It's 8 to 10 inches long. Solder together, put a wire nut on it. Do the same thing with the black. Do the same thing with the ground. And then I attach the one pigtail, the black one to the brass screw, the white one to the silver screw, and the bare copper to the green screw. Now, no downstream outlets will be disrupted because of failure of a receptacle. So that's just a thumbnail on wiring. Just some thoughts for you to do some more research, and you'll probably do it the way we do it, but it takes way longer. Class, thanks so much. See you next week.